Welcome into K-State Online. I am Mason Voth. That is Drew Galloway. And on this day that the Big 12 tournament gets underway in Kansas City, we are talking football because basketball, it's going to have a lot coming at you tonight. We also did a pretty long show yesterday previewing K-State, Arizona State, the Big 12 tournament, just kind of having a lot of fun. What I would call good driving material if you're from basically an hour or more outside of Kansas City, it's worth listening to on the drive to the Big 12 tournament. Or, if you're sitting there and you're thinking, oh, State, Cincinnati is really boring, pop that in, listen to it. But you're probably going to want to listen to this too, because we've got a recruiting update that we owe you. We know K-State basketball, we had talked a little bit about that last week. They landed 2 guys. But on the football side, Drew, what is this time of year looking like for recruiting and Chris Kleiman's team?
Yeah, so you're starting to see some unofficial visits have taken place over this last weekend. You're going to see spring football. I believe the first practice is April 2nd or 3rd, or it's somewhere in there, which still feels extremely far away, by the way, as we're kind of talking about where everything lies with that. And there will be a junior day event on April 5th that I think that we're going to see a lot of unofficial visitors for. I think right now that I've uncovered like 5 or 6 that are going to be there April 5th. And what's interesting about those is a couple of them already have official visits scheduled. It's not the same day as the junior day event, but Mason Lewis, who is a big time target out of Arizona, will be taking an unofficial visit to K-State April 4th. And I think that that's a big thing because he's a guy that already has an official visit to K-State scheduled. K-State has been a big time school for him during his entire recruitment. He might be one of the top players on K-State's recruiting board, period, and not just at safety. So I think that that's a big deal. But yeah, this part of the calendar is a little bit of everything because they can have some unofficial visitors come before practices even start because we're in a contact period again. You'll see more throughout the spring. You obviously see a ton during the summer. So it's kind of a bit of a wait and see. K-State's at 1 commit right now, still in the 2026 class, but like I've said a few times, no need to really panic. They are going to take a smaller class anyway with what they have, because you look at what K-State's roster is, it's pretty young still in terms of experience and everything. And the guys that are older, you probably want to replace more in the portal. So I think this will probably be like a 14 to 16 high school range class-wise. And then you just look at how many official visits are already scheduled. I think that they're at 23 or 24 that we've uncovered so far. I think that they're doing fine. I don't know when the next commit's going to happen, but I would be a little bit surprised if they went into the month of June still just at 1 commit.
Okay, so that's some encouraging news. June, though, is a little over. I mean, it's closer to 3 months away than 2 months away.
Yes.
On that front, though, we know that K-State has struggled to make much headway in state so far this year. And some of that is because of things that you've lined out with. It's not going to be a large class to begin with. They have either, certain guys that maybe they don't value as much in the state as other places have so far. And then, like just anything, you're going to have some guys that they're aligned one way or another before you even got into this process. That's going to be tough to overcome. But there are a couple guys, obviously, that they're still kind of tracking down. So where do you see in-state recruitment at for K-State at this point in time?
Yeah, in-state recruitment-wise, LaMarcus Barber is a big name to know, offensive lineman from Mill Valley. If we were making like a DraftKings FanDuel board, LaMarcus Barber would probably be like minus 150 to be next commit to K-State. Like, I think that he's probably the safest bet, but obviously it's not a slam dunk because anything can change in recruitments. You look at what he's got. He has unofficial visits to Missouri and Kentucky, and I think Arkansas and Boston College scheduled for the spring. I think his recruitment is really kind of starting to blow up a little bit, but K-State has always been there at the top because K-State was the first school to offer him, period. Still the only Power 4 school to offer him. And K-State will get him on campus April 18th. And I think that that's a visit to at least monitor, because I wouldn't be shocked if a commitment happens at that time period, but I could also see him kind of wanting to take his time because he's getting more Power 4 interest kind of as we speak. Another guy, obviously, is Ian Premer. K-State's going to be in the mix. It's going to be tough for K-State. But what's interesting is that I once thought it was probably going to be like Iowa State or K-State. Now it seems like more and more you're kind of hearing that it's going to be K-State or Ian Premer leaves the region altogether. So that's kind of an interesting note. I know that a lot of people would probably freak out a little bit if he ended up just going to Iowa State instead. So I'll put a little bit of water on that one and say that it wouldn't be shocking if he ends up leaving the region. Another guy that hasn't even been offered yet, but an offer would not shock me from this in-state prospect is Lawson McGraw. He has visited K-State a few times already. K-State has done well in the Blue Valley area. I know that he goes to Blue Valley West. Right now, he has a couple FCS offers in Arkansas State, but K-State's really kind of hunting and tracking and keeping track of him. So I'd keep tabs on him. If he gets offered, I would say that Lawson McGraw would end up being even above LaMarcus Barber in terms of who the next commit to K-State could be.
We see, you mentioned some of the official visits that are starting to get lined up, more and more guys getting added to that. What is this process like now for recruits versus what it was 3 years ago? Because now there also isn't a cap on official visits, right? Like that was one of the things too, where guys were limited to only so many, and now it's, somebody just posted that they got like 6 or 7 of them lined up right now. Kind of crazy. And then we know that the priorities of what guys are looking for is changing in recruiting for college football or really any sport. So what are some of the differences now that people should keep in mind with this stuff when you talk about anybody, or, you're mentioning it? Didn't seem like the greatest update that you just gave on Ian Premer. So where do some of the thoughts need to lie there for people with how recruitment is playing out these days?
Yeah, so how it's all kind of playing out nowadays, like you said, having unlimited official visits that you can take has really thrown a wrench into things, because beforehand, a guy would take like 4 or 5 official visits in the summer, and then you're like, okay, he has hit his cap at 5. Like, you don't really have to worry as much about like, is a flip going to happen, because he'd be paying his way to go there, and unofficial visits are just so different than the official visits. But now that you can take official visits to as many schools as you really want, it kind of throws a wrench into things, because you really have to go above and beyond when you're giving somebody an official visit to really set it apart. As far as the Ian Premer news goes, it's not necessarily bad news, but I think that I would rather have Ian Premer go out of the region than end up just going to Iowa State instead of K-State, if given the 2 options.
Yeah, but I think what I think that comes across as, in the past updates, you'd still been, I think K-State's the leader. Now it seems to me like it's option number 2 is the leader, and we don't know who option number 2 is, but it doesn't feel like it's K-State.
Yeah, I would say that K-State probably not the leader for Ian Premer anymore. It was going to be tough to begin with, because you got to remember, all of K-State's tight ends can come back when Premer takes over as a true freshman, or would step on campus as a true freshman. There's still a little bit of talk about Lincoln Kier still sticking with K-State might mean that Premer wants to go somewhere else, because they're from the same part of the state, same position. You don't always want to go to the same school. So it's tough.
And the thing is like, this would not impact really the coaches necessarily, but just from a perception standpoint, to everything you're talking about there, Cure was first. And at the end of the day, it's shaping up right now that like Ian Premer might end up being the higher rated within his class than Lincoln Cure.
Yes.
But I think the way a lot of people look at this is that, Cure is up here and Premer's, a step below just because of the timing of all of it. And so there is probably like a different path to be carved there. And that probably makes it a little bit difficult. But on the topic of difficulties, when you talk about the official visits and how some of that's changed, what is there a selection process for coaches now on, in the past, if you really wanted a guy, it's like, yeah, throw an official visit. You can come do this, all this. Do they have to be more selective now about that with guys being able to take unlimited to see like, is this guy just getting and we know this already happened when it was smaller, but like free trips and like, what's the actual interest? Because official visits, those are guys that you have to put time and effort into to make sure that they have the right experience and all this. Like, are they going to also have to start being like, yeah, we actually don't want you to take an official visit here? Like, will that start to happen or should it?
I think that it'll start to happen. And I think that K-State was already doing a really good job of only getting guys that have legitimate interest in them to take official visits. But that will be something to really monitor because individual prospects, they can take as many official visits as they feel that they want, but schools are still capped at a certain number. So because of that, it's going to be a more selective process just for everybody. And then the other thing that kind of goes with that selective process, and you saw this really, really work out for K-State in 2023 with Jordan Allen, you really have to know the guys that are coming to your school to take an official visit on what like their commitment timeline was. Because I remember a lot of the hubbub post Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards committing in 2023 was, well, why didn't K-State bring Jordan Allen on an official visit? Because K-State was in a good spot for Jordan Allen literally from the beginning that they offered him as well. Well, K-State knew that Jordan Allen didn't want to commit until like right before his senior season started in September.
Yeah, he committed on like that Friday
Yeah,
that his first game would have been, I think.
yeah. So like you also have to know when your guys that you're going after are going to want to commit, because you want to be either closer to where they are going to commit, or if you're going to take an official visit with somebody, you really have to knock it out of the park if it's not at that certain time period. Like I know that we've talked a little bit about how K-State's butting heads with Oklahoma State a lot. And I've noticed that Oklahoma State has a lot of official visits scheduled for April. And I don't know how that's going to work for them, because a lot of these guys want to make decisions in like the summertime or like when Jordan Allen did, like right before his first game.
Yeah, you think about it, feels like for K-State, their sweet spot has pretty much been like July 4th week, like around that time has garnered a lot recently, or like you're saying, just before seasons get going, guys want to make that decision and get things cleaned up. Anything else on recruiting right now? I know that you keep mentioning it feels like we're forever away from spring ball starting, and so then things heat up and everything football wise. But anything else that you want to get out there on K-State football recruiting?
Yeah, I would just hit on that. Running back is probably the most fascinating position to me of this entire class. K-State probably just needs one because they've had so many studs come in over the last handful of years in the recruiting classes. But K-State right now has 6 running backs taking an official visit during the summer. The spots are going to be very scarce. They're in a good spot for a lot of these guys. They have family connections for a couple of these guys. Like one of them is DJ Giddens' cousin. So like you kind of look at that as, who does K-State really prioritize?
Well, I was gonna say, the scarcity create urgency for these guys. Like, is there a clear pecking order where K-State's like, we'll wait for this guy or this guy, or is it we think they're all pretty similar, we'll just take whichever one pops first?
I'm very fascinated by it, and I wouldn't be shocked if it is somebody, if it's something like we're just going to take whoever ends up committing first. But it will be very fascinating because a lot of them also have spring visits scheduled to K-State too. So I'll be really keeping an eye out on what the running back pecking order looks like. We're starting to see an offensive lineman board being built out by Brian LePack. Force of habit there, almost said Connor Riley, and I was like, that is not correct. But that old habits die hard. Bennett Frazier is the guy to really know about along the offensive line. He's a tackle from Kirksville, Missouri. If you remember last class, I believe Andrew Williams was a Kirksville, Missouri native, and K-State got really close to landing him before he ended up picking BYU. Bennett Frazier probably going to come down to K-State, Missouri. And even though he's a Missouri kid, I wouldn't be shocked if K-State is really probably slightly ahead of where Missouri is right now. I think that he really fits the K-State culture. Doesn't mean as much because he's not there anymore, but Connor Riley really loved Bennett Frazier, and we're seeing Brian LePack really love Bennett Frazier. And Bennett Frazier even went out of his way to talk about how much that he really loves Brian LePack and how much that he has given, how much love that LePack has given Frazier since he took over as offensive line coach. Another tackle to really keep in mind, because remember, small class also means small offensive line class, most likely.
Which is has been rare lately for this this staff. They've offensive linemen have come left and right.
Yeah, so this could be a class where they take as few as 2 offensive linemen. 3 might be the sweet spot, but and tackle has been the position that's really been prioritized because K-State's in such a good spot with LaMarcus Barber, who's an interior offensive lineman. But Daniel McMorris is somebody to know about at tackle. He has an official visit scheduled for June 19th. He will also be at K-State in April. So that's one to really keep in mind. And he's like Bennett Frazier, a tall guy. So they're actually about the same measurements at 6'5", 265. So those 2 are really guys to keep in mind. The running back situation will be fascinating. Quarterback is interesting because I don't know of a major target at the moment. I wouldn't be shocked if during the evaluation period, K-State finds a quarterback, offers him, takes him on a visit during the spring, gets an official visit scheduled. It's not something that I think really needs to be panicked because I think that Blake Barnett or Dylan Duff is good enough to be the next quarterback at K-State. But it's more of something that you really need to keep in mind because you want to take a quarterback in every recruiting class.
And you have to now, because even though you would think you can sustain a year without losing a guy, well, the way college football works is, Avery Johnson, he could theoretically leave after this year for, the NFL if he wanted to. I don't think that happens, but he could. And then like you get one other guy that says, "Hey, I want to transfer, I want to leave." Well, then you're kind of hurting there. So you do have to always pile up with one. But K-State has at least banked 3 that they seem very, very comfortable with moving forward, and we'll just have to see how they develop and it plays out over the next couple of years with the quarterback situation. But that's a good way to leave it. A little quarterback thinking for everybody.
Because it also, like, if you look, you can go on KSO and there's an official visit thread, but you can also, there's a tab that has all the official visits already scheduled. Quarterback, I believe, is now the only position that does not have an official visit scheduled.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Well, it's something to keep in mind and to watch for, and follow along. We'll keep updating everybody on the visits and the situations that play out in recruiting. We're also getting closer and closer to the time of the year where our recruiting updates will get longer because it will involve everything K-State's doing football-wise and more guys coming in on committing, but we're also going to hit transfer portal season in basketball. So the recruiting updates will start coming fast and furious in the next couple of weeks. But that'll do it for us today. For Drew Galloway, I'm Mason Voth. Thanks for watching and listening to the KSO Show. And be sure to check out all of our coverage from Kansas City in the Big 12 tournament throughout the rest of the week.